The clock on the microwave reads 3:47 a.m., and I'm sitting here gripping this coffee mug like it's the only solid thing left in my life. The air carries the stale, bitter scent of coffee gone cold 2 hours ago, a smell that settled into the kitchen like disappointment itself. I can't bring myself to get up and microwave it. That would require moving. That would require caring. And right now, caring feels like a luxury I can't afford. Somewhere behind me, the wall clock ticks with that soft, relentless rhythm, each second a tiny hammer against the silence. My fingers have gone numb around the ceramic, the tips tingling with that distant, pins and needles ache, but I don't loosen my hold. The kitchen is dark except for the blue glow of my phone screen, where an email sits open, the 5th rejection this month. We regret to inform you, 5 words that seem to pulse in the half-light, each one heavier than the last. T somehow weigh more than the stack of unpaid bills scattered across the counter. I've arranged them into piles. Due now. Past due. Final notice. The refrigerator hums behind me like it's mocking my silence, and the house, this house that was supposed to be a home, feels hollow, like hope packed its bags weeks ago and left without saying goodbye. I whisper it before I can stop myself. The words come out cracked, barely audible, like my voice forgot how to form anything except defeat. God, I don't think I can fight one more day. There it is. The ugly truth I'd been hiding behind polite smiles and "I'm fine, how are you" responses. The truth I won't post on social media because nobody wants to see the behind the scenes of someone falling apart at 3:47 in the morning. But you know what I'm talking about, don't you? That exhaustion that goes deeper than sleep can fix. The kind of tired that settles into your bones and makes you wonder if tomorrow is even worth the effort of opening your eyes. Maybe you've been here too. Maybe it wasn't a kitchen counter but a hospital waiting room, the weight of a diagnosis pressing against your chest while everyone else sleeps. Maybe it was the parking lot outside your job, sitting in your car an extra 10 minutes because you couldn't face walking through those doors again. Maybe it was the silence after an argument, when the words you can't take back hung in the air like smoke, and you realized your marriage feels more like a battlefield than a refuge. For me, it's all of it. The anxiety that tightens around my chest at 2 a.m. like a fist I can't pry open. The secret I'd been carrying, an addiction I told myself I'd beat by now, a habit that whispers just one more time and then laughs when I believe it. The chronic illness that doesn't announce itself with drama but slowly, quietly erodes my strength until getting out of bed feels like climbing a mountain. I become an expert at looking functional while feeling completely hollow inside. The blanket I dragged from the bedroom is wrapped around my shoulders, but it doesn't do anything for the cold that comes from inside. You know that cold, right? The one that has nothing to do with temperature and everything to do with the slow, creeping fear that maybe God forgot your address. Maybe He's busy with other people's miracles. Maybe your prayers are just bouncing off the ceiling, returning to you unanswered like that rejection email, like the bills that keep coming, like the silence that fills every room of this house. I pick up the cold coffee. I set it down. The sting of unshed tears burns behind my eyes, but I've trained myself not to cry. Crying feels like admitting defeat, and I've got too much pride left for that, or maybe too little hope. It's hard to tell the difference some nights. But something stirred. Not strength. Don't get me wrong, I didn't suddenly feel powerful or victorious or any of those words Christians throw around when they want to sound spiritual. This wasn't a breakthrough moment with triumphant music swelling in the background. This was a flicker. Barely a spark. The kind of tiny, fragile thing you could miss if you weren't paying attention. A memory surfaced. My grandmother, lying in a hospital bed 20 years ago, her body ravaged by cancer, her voice reduced to a whisper. She hadn't spoken in hours, and we all thought she was already gone, her spirit halfway to heaven while her body caught up. But then her lips moved, and she breathed out words I've never forgotten, words from a book of the Bible I'd never heard anyone quote before. Affliction will not rise up a second time. Nahum. The minor prophet nobody reads. The book tucked between Micah and Habakkuk like an afterthought. But my grandmother clung to those words like a lifeline, and now, 20 years later, in my dark kitchen at 3:47 a.m., they came back to me. Here's the part where I'm supposed to tell you I stood up, raised my hands, and declared victory over my circumstances. But that's not what happened. I'm not that kind of Christian, the kind who always has the right scripture, the perfect prayer, the unshakable faith. If I'm being honest, I felt like a fraud. Who was I to speak God's promises when my own doubt was louder than my belief? Who was I to declare anything when I couldn't even pay my bills or fix my marriage or beat the addiction that had its claws in my soul? But I did it anyway. My voice cracked on the first word. Affliction. I sounded pathetic, like a child trying to sound brave in a dark room. Will not rise up. The words felt foreign in my mouth, like I was speaking a language I didn't understand. A second time. There was no lightning. No angelic choir. The refrigerator kept humming. The bills stayed scattered across the counter. My phone screen still glowed with that rejection email. Nothing changed except something shifted inside me. Not an earthquake. A tremor. The smallest possible movement, like a locked door rattling because someone just tried the handle. I said it again. Louder this time, though my voice still shook. Affliction will not rise up a second time. And I realized I wasn't just quoting scripture. I was drawing a line in the sand. I was telling the darkness that it didn't get to have the final word, even if I didn't fully believe it yet. Some mornings, faith sounds less like a shout and more like a whisper in a dark kitchen. Some mornings, the bravest thing you can do is speak a promise you're not sure you believe, just to see if the words might teach your heart something your head hasn't figured out yet. But does speaking to the darkness actually change anything? I said the words. Affliction will not rise up a second time. And the microwave kept humming. The bills stayed scattered. My reflection in the dark window still looked exhausted and broken and maybe a little foolish for whispering ancient promises to an empty kitchen. But here's what actually happened next, and I need you to hear this because nobody talks about this part. The paralysis broke. Not the circumstances. The paralysis. That frozen place inside me where I'd been sitting for months, unable to pray, unable to move, unable to do anything except doomscroll and rehearse worst-case scenarios. Something shifted, not in my bank account, not in my marriage, not in that rejection email still glowing on my phone, but in my spine. In my will. In whatever part of the soul decides to stop playing dead. I stood up. That sounds small. It wasn't. You have to understand, I'd been sitting at that kitchen counter for 2 hours, 2 hours of bargaining with God, 2 hours of what-ifs and if-onlys and why did this happen. 2 hours of letting the darkness gaslight me into believing I was powerless. And then 3 words from a minor prophet I'd never read, spoken through my grandmother's dying lips, and suddenly my legs worked again. POV, you're watching someone who just remembered they're in a fight. I walked to the window. 4:12 a.m. now. Still dark, but not the heavy darkness of midnight. That thin, gray darkness that knows dawn is coming even if it can't see it yet. I pressed my forehead against the cold glass and let myself feel something I hadn't felt in weeks, not hope exactly, but defiance. Holy defiance. The kind that says, I'm still here. I'm still standing. And I'm not giving you the satisfaction of watching me quit. Section hook, but standing up was just the first move. The real battle started when I picked up my phone. Mine came at 4:17 a.m. I don't know why I check my phone, habit maybe, or addiction, or the desperate need to feel connected to someone, anyone. There it was. A message from someone I used to trust, someone who knew exactly where my wounds were and how to press on them. The enemy doesn't fight fair. You know this. He doesn't come at you with flaming arrows and obvious attacks, he comes with memory. With accusation. With the voice that sounds like your own but isn't, the one that whispers, see? Nothing's changed. You're still the same failure you were 2 hours ago. God didn't hear you. Those words didn't work. I almost believed it. I almost sat back down. I almost let the shame win. But then I remembered something my grandmother used to say, not from Nahum this time, but from Isaiah. She'd quoted when the cancer came back, when the treatments failed, when the doctors ran out of options. No weapon forged against you will prevail. She didn't say it like a magic spell. She said it like a fact. Like gravity. Like something so fundamentally true that arguing with it would be like arguing with sunrise. Here's where I need to be honest with you. Here's where I need to be honest with you. I wanted proof. Not quiet reassurance, I wanted fire. I wanted God to reach down and erase the one thing that was gutting me from the inside out, that single text message, already delivered, already read, hanging in the digital silence like a verdict I couldn't appeal. If he could just unsend it, I told myself, everything else would breathe again. The shame would loosen its grip. The overdue notices on the counter would somehow feel less heavy. But God didn't move toward the screen. He moved toward my mouth. Not my feelings, because those were a storm I couldn't name. Not my certainty, because I had none left. Not the tidy theology I used to hold up like a shield. Just my mouth, trembling, reluctant, still tasting the bitterness of my own excuses. He wanted the one thing I was least willing to offer, my voice, speaking his words back into the wreckage, long before my heart believed a single syllable meaning the opposite. Because faith isn't a feeling, it's a declaration. And declarations don't require you to feel brave. They just require you to open your mouth. So at 4:21 a.m., standing at my kitchen window with shame burning in my chest and that text message still glowing on my phone, I made a choice. I refused the identity of a victim. Not because I felt victorious, I didn't. Not because the circumstances had changed, they hadn't. But because Isaiah 54 verse 17 isn't a promise about what won't come against you. It's a promise about what won't succeed. The weapons will come. The accusations will come. The shame will come. But they will not have the final word. I spoke it out loud. No weapon formed against me shall prosper. My voice still cracked. My hands still shook. But I said it anyway. And then I said it again. And again. Not as a chant. Not as a ritual. As a conscious, deliberate choice to align my mouth with heaven's reality instead of earth's evidence. Mirror moment, you've been there. Maybe not at 4 a.m., maybe not with a text message, but you felt that moment when everything in you wants to collapse and someone keeps you standing. You know that thin line between giving up and getting up. You know how close you've come to crossing it. Memorable truth, faith isn't the absence of shaking. It's speaking God's promises with a trembling voice. Section hook, but I need to tell you a secret. And this is the part I've never said out loud before. I've been here before. Not this exact kitchen, not this exact crisis, but this cycle. Breakthrough one day, breakdown the next. A mountaintop experience on Sunday, a valley of despair by Tuesday. I've had moments where I thought I was finally free from the addiction, free from the depression, free from the patterns that kept me chained, only to crash harder than ever before. And every crash made me more afraid to stand up again. Because what's the point of getting up if you're just going to fall? What's the point of hope if disappointment is waiting around the corner? What's the point of declaring victory when defeat keeps showing up at your door like an unwanted relative who won't take the hint? I started to believe the lie that some falls are final. That maybe I'd used up my quota of grace. That maybe God was tired of picking me up, dusting me off, watching me stumble again. Then I found Micah. Not the whole book, I'm not that spiritual. One verse. Micah 7 verse 8. My grandmother would have known it by heart, but I stumbled across it by accident, scrolling through a Bible app at 2 a.m. during one of those crashes. And it stopped me cold. When I fall, I shall rise. Not if I fall. When? The assumption isn't perfection. The assumption is failure. The assumption is that you're going to hit the ground hard, and the question isn't whether you'll fall but what happens next. When I sit in darkness, the Lord will be a light to me. This isn't triumphalism. This isn't the prosperity gospel. So I stood up. Not dramatically. Not like some movie scene where the hero rises with a swelling soundtrack and perfect lighting. My knees cracked. My back ached from sitting on that cold kitchen tile for who knows how long. The coffee mug was still in my hand, stone cold now, the dregs of it looking like mud at the bottom. But something had shifted. Not the circumstances. But I was standing. And standing, I realized, is its own kind of warfare. Zechariah 4 verse 7 started rising up in my chest. And I don't mean it floated gently into my mind like a dove carrying an olive branch. I mean it came up like a freight train. Who are you, O great mountain? Before Zerubbabel you shall become a plain. And I didn't whisper it. I didn't quietly meditate on it. I shouted it. At 4:30 in the morning. In my kitchen. With tears streaming down my face and my voice cracking so bad I sounded like a 14-year-old boy going through puberty. Who are you, O great mountain? Here's the thing about mountains. The mountain just sits there, massive and silent and immovable, and it dares you to do something about it. And for so long, I'd been doing nothing. I'd been sitting on the floor, staring at the mountain, waiting for God to vaporize it while I watched. But Zechariah wasn't told to sit and wait. He was told to speak. To the mountain. Directly. So I did. I named it. Out loud. Not some vague bless me, Lord prayer. I got specific. I called out the debt by name. I called out the fear of that doctor's appointment I'd been avoiding. I called out the broken relationship and the silence that had grown between us like a wall. I called out the shame that had been gaslighting me into believing I was disqualified from grace. And then I said the words that changed everything. Not because they're magic. Not because I said them perfectly. But because they shifted my posture from victim to victor before a single circumstance changed. Before me, you shall become a plain. This was a messy, desperate war cry from a person who had nothing left but a promise and a God who makes mountains bow. Memorable truth: grace doesn't always remove the mountain instantly. Sometimes grace makes you a mountain climber. And sometimes grace puts a shout in your throat so loud the mountain starts to crumble from the inside out. Here's what I realized, standing there in my kitchen with a cold mug and a hot mess of emotions. The battle was never about the obstacle disappearing. The battle was about my posture. I'd been living under what I call the curse of the ceiling, the quiet, toxic belief that my prayers were bouncing off some invisible barrier, that God's answers were for other people but not for me, that I was somehow pre-disqualified from breakthrough. I'd been praying like a beggar hoping for scraps instead of a son declaring his inheritance. And that's when Deuteronomy 28 verse 13 hit different. The Lord will make you the head and not the tail. You shall be above only, and not beneath. I'd read that verse 100 times. I'd highlighted it in 3 different colors. I'd written it on sticky notes and stuck them to my bathroom mirror. But I'd never walked in it. I'd never let it change the way I entered a room, the way I faced a problem, the way I spoke to a mountain. I'd been living like a tail while quoting verses about being the head. And that contradiction was killing my faith. So I did something practical. Because faith without works is dead, and declarations without action are just positive thinking with a Jesus filter. I picked up one bill. Just one. The smallest one. The one I could actually pay. And I paid it. Not because paying it solved my financial crisis, it didn't even make a dent. But because paying it was a prophetic act. It was me saying, I will not be ruled by lack. I will not be paralyzed by the size of the mountain. I will do what I can do and trust God with what I can't. Then I scheduled the doctor's appointment I'd been avoiding for 6 months. My fingers trembled as I clicked confirm. Then I opened the message thread with the person I'd been estranged from. I didn't write a novel. I didn't rehash the conflict. I just typed, "I'm praying for you today. I mean it." And I hit send before my fear could tackle me to the ground. Mini hook, and something broke. Not the mountain, not yet. Something broke in me. The paralysis. The victim mindset. The lie that I was powerless. Psalm 18 verse 29 says, "For by you I can run through a troop, and by my God I can leap over a wall." I'd always read that as a nice metaphor. But standing in my kitchen at 4:45 a.m., I realized David wasn't being poetic. He was being literal. He was saying, "My God doesn't just open doors, He makes me a door breaker. He doesn't just remove walls, He makes me a wall leaper." The power wasn't in the mountain moving. The power was in me moving despite the mountain. Mirror moment, this is for the person who woke up tired. Not just physically tired, soul tired. The kind of tired that sleep can't fix. You've been fighting battles nobody knows about. You've been smiling on the outside while something inside you is barely holding on. You've been waiting for a breakthrough that feels perpetually delayed, and part of you has started to wonder if God forgot your address. You are not forgotten. You are not overlooked. You are not disqualified. The fact that you're still breathing means the war isn't over, and the fact that the war isn't over means victory is still possible. I still don't have all the answers. Let me be crystal clear about that. My bills didn't magically disappear when I shouted at my kitchen wall. The relationship isn't instantly restored. The health concern didn't evaporate. But I have a God who runs through troops. I have a God who makes mountains into plains. And I have a voice, and I'm done being silent. The war was never mine to win. It was only ever mine to declare. Final memorable truth: you don't fight for victory. You fight from victory. The outcome was decided on a cross and sealed at an empty tomb. Your job isn't to convince God to move. Your job is to align your mouth with what heaven has already decreed. So here's my prayer for you. Not a polished, theological, impressive prayer. A raw, simple, 4:47 a.m. kitchen floor kind of prayer. Father, I lift up the person reading this right now. You know their mountain. You know the thing that's been stealing their sleep and draining their hope. I ask for one thing, one day of peace,